The opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Cable 14, its sponsors, or its shareholders, Cogeco Cable, Shaw Cable, and Source Cable Limited.
And welcome to the December 22nd edition of Hamilton Talks. I am Larry Di Ianni, the host of the program, and Hamilton Talks, of course, is a community affairs program that talks to prominent Hamiltonians who are in the news, or Hamiltonians who may not be prominent but are also in the news and are advancing our community. And so we're very pleased tonight to continue discussions, and our very special guest is MP David Sweet. And David Sweet has been MP since 2006. He's been the Conservative Member of Parliament for Ancaster-Dundas-Flamborough-Westdale. He's the Chair of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Industry, Science and Tech, Chair of the Canada-Israel Interdisciplinary Interparliamentary Group, and Chair of the All-Party Steel Caucus. In February of 2011, Mr. Sweet introduced Bill C-620, the Fairness for Victims of Violent Offenders Act, a private member's bill that would enshrine certain victims' rights and offer great choice to victims in the National Parole Board process. The bill died at the end of the last election, but Mr. Sweet promises to revive it again during this section of Parliament. Prior to Mr. Sweet going to Parliament, of course, he was in the private not-for-profit sector and was very successful as that as well. And MP Sweet continues to be an outdoor enthusiast, rides his motorcycle, as well as a very active regimen of exercise, and we'll talk to him about that as well. And David and his wife Almut live in Ancaster with two of their children. And we welcome you to the program, MP David Sweet.
Thank you very much, Larry. And Merry Christmas, and Merry Christmas to all your viewers. Happy Hanukkah, and the best, of course, for 2012, prosperous and joyful.
Well, you know what, and that's a great way to start, because we are just a few days away from Christmas. Have you done all your shopping?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I never get to Christmas, and I'm always fully prepared. But fortunately, I have a great wife who helps me out in that regard.
Well, you know, you and I share that, because she does most of the work, and I have to do just a little bit. And I keep teasing people that if it's not December 24th, then I'm not done. But I'm ahead of the curve this time. David, let's talk a little bit about some personal stuff, first of all. Viewers may notice, and this is the obvious question, you've lost a lot of weight since you were first elected as MP. How have you done that? And you're going to write a book on it.
Well, actually, it's been for the last year. Last January, you know, I never talk about any kind of New Year's resolutions because, you know, they're sometimes very difficult to keep. But I decided that I would get on a good physical exercise regimen, watch what I eat. And so I'm really back to the weight of when I started in politics back in 2004. And I feel good and fit and even better health to serve the great people of Ancaster-Dundas.
Well, let me tell you, you look great, but it's got to be tough because you're on a rubber chicken circuit to some extent, and the temptations are always there, but you manage to keep disciplined about it, do you?
Well, thanks again, but you have to. I mean, it's just, you know, you've got to stay away from the receptions are necessary to make sure you network and get the best that you can for your own community and the government, but at the same time, you know, you don't have to eat everything that's around you either.
Indeed. Well, David, you were elected in 2006. You came in as part of an opposition, and now you are the government. You also have been the government for a while, but the difference is that you were in the minority situation. Now you've got a majority. So what's the difference being in government, in minority and majority?
Yeah, well, in 2006 we were also in government at the time, so I've never experienced opposition myself, but you know, the real big difference is that the efficiency in the House. We're moving along, getting a lot done. You know, we've dealt with the budget implementation bill to make sure that we get measures move forward for things like tax credits for families, making sure that we, for the EI payments for small business, that we reduce those so that that impact they can absorb in this very challenging economy that we have. All of the measures that were involved in that. And we got that passed, and as well we dealt with the promise that we made to Canadians about crime and making sure that we got tough on those who are going to participate in serious crime and victimize people.
Well, listen, I want to talk about some of those issues because, of course, yes, you're in a majority situation, which means you can pass bills, but there's always controversy because the opposition parties are always there as well. And I want to be able to talk about some and then drill down to some of the local issues here as well. But just on some personal matters first. David, you've made no secret of the fact that you're an avowed, strong practicing Christian. And I don't know why someone of faith sometimes gets criticized for his or her beliefs, as the case may be. You have been. How difficult is it to be a person of faith representing all constituents, including those who may not be believers?
Well, to some degree, it's politics. You know, I often tell people that you have to have alligator skin and a lamb's heart. You know, you have to really love the people that you serve, and at the same time, you've got to let some of the words, particularly that come out of our media sometimes, just to run off your back like water. But you know, to me, my faith actually inflames my ability to serve. I mean, I do the best that I possibly can to make sure that every constituent is represented as fairly as possible, no matter what background they're from. And I think my record speaks for itself in that regard.
Well, and one of the controversial points, let's put it this way, was a video that you participated in, an anti-bullying video that came on the heels of a young man in Ottawa, I believe, a young gay youth in Ottawa, who tragically committed suicide. And the video featured a number of voices and faces, yours among them, essentially telling people to don't take drastic action in the face of bullying because things do get better, can get better. And yet you were heavily criticized, especially by some local members of the gay community. How did you feel about that?
Well, you know, like I said, some of it is politics as usual, but to me, defending people is what I'm called to do. It's part of my office. And I feel privileged that people continue to elect me and allow me to do that. So I don't apologize for that at all. And bullying is a very serious issue for everybody from every walk of life. We see it in young people. We see it even with mature adults in workplaces. And of course, the tragic end result sometimes are suicides. 3,000 every year, 3,000 tragedies that happen in Canada every year. My colleague Harold Albrecht has a private member's bill to deal with asking the government for a federal framework on suicide prevention, so we can get really behind the scenes and see what's causing young people, what are causing, you know, I mean, bullying is part of it, but there's also other, you know, factors that cause people to give up. And I was recently at a funeral here locally for a young lad who was served in armed forces who had taken his own life. Those are tough things to go through, and so we want, you know, I would like to work to get to the bottom of that and do what we can to try and give people hope, to develop services if necessary, to work with the province and municipalities so that we can prevent these tragedies from happening and the families going through this suffering.
So your presence in the video was to give the message that bullying is not good, and to give some strength and encouragement to people who may be victimized by bullying.
Exactly.
And yet
exactly.
The focus seemed to be, though, certainly because of the circumstances around this gay youth. And in fact, Rick Mercer, a famous Canadian comedian, but he also does some very serious rants
yeah.
with a message, did one. And he wanted, of course, he's gay himself, he wanted people in government and positions of leadership, even those who may be gay but may be in the closet, so to speak, to come out and profess who they are. And that was the message that he gave on in that occasion. Do you agree with him? Is that what needs to be done? How do you feel about that?
You know, Larry, sexuality is an extraordinarily intimate and personal thing. So I think, you know, for me to tell you or tell anybody in Hamilton or across Canada how they should behave, how they should represent themselves, I think I'd leave that up to the individual.
Okay, fair enough. David, Hamilton, let's talk a little bit about the political situation in Hamilton. You've alluded to business as usual. Hamilton, of course, is an interesting place, and I've been frustrated watching the people's will, and I have to respect it. Doesn't mean I have to like it in terms of the decisions they make. And I'm talking from a personal perspective as well, as you might know. But the reality is that Hamilton has elected 3 NDP members, good people in their own right, but individuals who are not near power, or they're a little closer now than they were, but they're not near power at all. And they've elected you, as well as MP Dean Allison from your party as well, whom we share with the Niagara area.
Right.
Right? So the question is this: given this mix, given the rivalries that exist and the partisanship that exists, behind closed doors, is there collaboration, cooperation with members of the other party?
Well, there's a deep respect, first off, because like you said, I mean, in the phrase "the voters are always right," is correct. I mean, they made that choice, and I respect that. And so I respect my colleagues, their representatives in Parliament, of their constituents. I've worked very closely with David Christopherson in the Public Accounts Committee several years ago when I was the senior government member on that committee. And now I work with Wayne Marston, who's on the Subcommittee for Human Rights that I've been on for the last 5 years. And so, yeah, there's a lot of places where we work, we need to work, and we do work together, particularly most recently on human rights, and to make sure that there's all kinds of people that don't have it as good as we have it here, that live with freedom and democracy like we have it. And so we do some good work in that subcommittee, and Wayne and I work together in that regard.
Okay, so there is cooperation among them, but obviously you're both members of different parties, and those differences will show either through the implementation of policies and or the putting forward of different agendas. So let's talk about some of those as well. Just recently, we saw an accord through the courts between U.S. Steel and your government, the federal government. I think the minister announced that rather than of going through with the lawsuit, there was an accommodation, a settlement made through the courts as well, which talked about some benefits coming to the community. The opposition parties wasted no time to indicate that that was a sellout, that the jobs were not protected, that in fact we are not doing the best for the workers locally, and that your government went back on its words.
Well, it's a great question to demonstrate that we can also vociferously disagree. You know what? Our government was the first government that ever took action under the Investment Canada Act, and we took U.S. Steel to court because they hadn't lived up to their undertakings, and we spent really years in court. And so U.S. Steel had approached the minister and wanted to settle. They settled by saying that we will live up to our undertakings, and not only that, we'll invest another $50 million, so a minimum of $250 million invested. We'll continue operations in Nanticoke and Hamilton till 2015, a minimum of 2015, and we'll also invest another $3 million in those communities for educational programs. And so I agree with the minister that this was a good settlement. Along with that, they still continue to live up to their undertaking to maintain the pension fund as well for those thousands of workers that are dependent upon that pension fund.
Non-indexed as though it may be.
No, absolutely. I mean, to us, this was a win-win situation. We have business that's going to invest, hopefully create even more jobs, sustain the ones that we have, and even commit more than their original undertakings.
So what happens, David, if they don't live up to this agreement the way they didn't live up to the last agreement?
Well, the good news on this particular agreement is the minister has more oversight because of the nature of the settlement. The Investment Canada Act is a piece of legislation that has some pretty arcane measures in it, and some of them are rightfully so because of the nature of when businesses buy their businesses and privacy concerns, et cetera. But this agreement and this settlement gives the minister much more oversight, and you know, part of their commitment is to invest $1 million right away. So that this is going to be, and my understanding is in the next 60 days that they'll be making that investment quickly, and this will give the minister his first indication of whether they're going to live up to these promises that they've made with this settlement.
And are there benchmarks along the way that the company has to meet with timelines so that the oversight that you say exists can be measured and publicly declared?
I don't know all the detail of it, but that's my understanding that there are enough, how would I say, avenues that the minister can get his teeth into that make sure that they will sustain this agreement.
Okay. Another issue that City Council has been talking about lately has to do with the pollution up at the airport that dates back to the time when, in fact, the airport was controlled by the federal government of another stripe, probably of a number of stripes, given the duration. And standards were different, and through no one's fault necessarily in terms of seeing the long-term impacts, some pollution was allowed to occur because of firefighting experiments that were done there. And so PFAS, what is known as PFAS, is seeping into the groundwater and doing some damage. It's going to cost the local city council, local taxpayer, quite a bit of money to fix that up. They're trying to get the airport operator to also pony up some money, even though they weren't operating at the time when the problems occurred. And people are saying, well, maybe the federal government should also pony up. What I mean, this is your ward, or at least near your riding, isn't it?
We share the airport. My colleague Dean Ellison and I. It's kind of interesting
so where
the two ridings meet, right. And it's very troubling that this is there. I mean, they were using this in a fire retardant foam. At the time, it was not known that it was contaminant, but now it's a serious issue. Of course, and I live very close, so it's a serious issue to me as well. The transfer happened with the existing laws at the time, and the minister's been clear that the issue's in municipal hands and the hands, of course, of Tradeport as well. But I have gone to the minister. Actually, my colleague Dean Ellison and I have spoken to the minister, and he's been agreed to review the case, and so I'll be following up in a new year just to see what that result of the review is.
Well, I think the Hamilton councillors will be pleased to know that it's being looked at again, and hopefully, at least from their perspective, they're hoping that there will be some assistance as well.
Yeah, there's I can't make any kind of commitment right now. The issue really is, like I said, the agreement happened at the time when all the laws that were in place were agreed to, et cetera. But we'll see what happens.
Okay. Another lawsuit, the Red Hill lawsuit, is percolating.
These all predate.
I know. Well, in fact, this one, we initiated under my watch when I was in the mayor's chair, primarily because the government of the day, which was the Liberal government at that time, took the city to court and was found to have used wrong legislation, essentially an abuse of power, in terms of applying legislation that didn't apply to this case. The city won the lawsuit, or at least won the court case. The road was allowed to continue, and it's a very popular and beneficial artery. But it cost the city...
I use it a lot myself.
Okay. It cost the city a lot of money. And so the judge, in his judgment at the time, said, look, you won. You can proceed with the court, with the road. And if you want some redress, then you've got to make application for that, which is what we did, essentially. And we had to use the lawsuit to try to get a settlement. Why hasn't there been a settlement?
Well, as I said, this predates our government. And
but
it was actually a minister that was involved. And, the action, it's in the courts. So
okay, but
my ability to comment on it is restrained from that.
I understand that. Sorry to interrupt. But we just talked about the settlement that was reached on the U.S. Steel side. Look, it's always better, I think, to settle rather than to litigate. But litigate if one must. Would an overture, and not that you have to commit to that, but just on the question, does it make sense that an overture around a settlement out of court might be beneficial?
Well, I think, I can't comment on this case, but I think in most cases, whenever there's a one party wants to approach the other with some kind of reasonable outcome, then generally it's looked at. So that would, in this regard though, it's still before the courts at the moment.
Right,
yeah.
It is. Well, I hear the wheels ticking, and so that is good, I think. stimulus money. You were very generous to the city. I think you brought some money for a number of projects. And yet some, and I'm not sure whose fault this is, but time has elapsed, and we, the city of Hamilton, I think lost $3 to $5 million, I heard, because of time elapsing. The provincial government extended the time to make sure that the city would get its money. Can the feds do the same?
Well, this is troubling because in the Ronald McDonald House case, good work is going on there. In the two cases of rec centers that were involved, obviously they serve the community. We invested, millions and millions. I believe just in the economic action plan was around $180 million. And of course that was leveraged with provincial and municipal funds as well. Over the last 5 years, been $700 million. But in those cases, we had already extended the deadline once. In fact, when we met with all the stakeholders, we said that these were stimulus funds to create jobs, not just infrastructure. We had told the Canadian public that. And for stewardship of that, this was the only extension that we'll provide. And that agreement was actually signed. And so the minister, being responsible, obviously, for thousands of projects across the country, over 20,000 economic action plan projects, actually, I believe 7,000 that are solid infrastructure like these ones, has said that there won't be any other extension, and that is his final decision, and I understand that. There's an accountability that we have for taxpayers, that these were meant to create jobs at a time when we really needed that stimulus action.
How many projects countrywide didn't make the deadline?
A handful.
A handful. Yeah. And unfortunately, we're part of that. And I've got to say this, I believe it was through no fault of the cities. I don't think it was that anybody was shirking their responsibilities, but events occurred, and that's too bad. It's tough.
It is tough.
It's tough enough to get projects approved. It's a shame if through timing issues we're losing them as well.
And like I said, it's when we look at the big picture of the investment, the federal investments that have been made, it's to focus on a couple that where they didn't meet the deadline, really detracts from the bigger story where there's a lot of successes and a lot of future opportunities because of them.
David, we're running out of time. We've only got a couple of minutes left. I want to give you a chance to sort of not only maybe review some of the accomplishments for the community over the last year, but also look ahead. Please.
Well, I think, we've had a lot of investments in infrastructures we've already talked about. One of the great announcements that we made to add to CanMet Metallurgical Lab was the McMaster Automotive Research Center in the McMaster Innovation Park. So that's going to attract quality people. It's going to create jobs. This is now going to be the #1 place for alternative energy for the automotive industry right here in our community. So all of these initiatives we hope will stimulate even more activity from the private sector. Of course, all the reduction in taxes, both business and for families, have brought about results directly to Hamilton. Tim Hortons brought their headquarters back a couple of years ago because of the tax regimen that they saw that was much more favorable here. And as a consequence, of course, Tim Hortons also built a grinding plant in the Ancaster Industrial Park. That's good quality manufacturing jobs, that I believe up to 50 jobs just in that one location. So we see story after story about that. FedDev and Canada Bread, the largest bakery in North America for Hamilton. So those are the kind of things that we've been able to participate in here. We hope more of that for the future. Again, we hope more return on investment for what we've already done, but really looking to strategic investments that we can make while we restrain spending in other areas, while we get control of the deficit, and really make sure that Canadians continue to see the best fiscal picture that really is amongst the G7 and all industrialized countries as we go forward, so that we can create jobs, so that we can have a secure economy for our kids and their kids for many years to come.
Well, that sounds like a lot of work ahead, and I'm pleased to hear some of the economic benefits that will come to this community, because that needs to be a focus for us as well. David, we didn't have a chance to talk about Kyoto and some of the environmental policies as well. What replaces Kyoto now that it's been left behind. We'll have to do that next time. Will you come back and
I'd love to do that, because the seriousness as far as the direction of greenhouse gases, clean air, clean land, clean water, we have a good plan, and we have a good plan to bring the international community under one agreement where they're all accountable as well.
Well, we want to hear about that and also some of the things that the opposition is saying. You've got a New Year's levy coming up.
Yes, yes. So once again, Merry Christmas to all Hamiltonians, and make sure that you come out January 2nd to the Dundas Town Hall from noon to 3:30, and we'll make sure that you have some cider or coffee, and please bring a non-perishable food item, because while we're doing that and bringing in the new year, we also want to make sure that those less fortunate have access to a good supply in the food bank, and so we'll do our part in that regard, and if everybody brings out some food, we'll have a good big truckload to give to them.
Well, great. Thanks for being here, and Merry Christmas to you and Almut and the family as well.
Thank you very much, Larry.
And thank you for watching Hamilton Talks. This is our last program before the new year. We will come back on January the 5th, and I'm not sure who our guest is going to be on the 5th, but we'll have an interesting one. And I can tell you this, though, that sometime in the new year, the Premier of Ontario has agreed to be on Hamilton Talks as well. Thanks for watching, and please stay tuned during the holidays for all of the special programs that have been taped, and we'll see you in January.